Hi, I'd like to talk today about three different production techniques that are very important to have if you're shooting live video. They're going to be three techniques that involve using a clapboard, why you'll want to use one, and what kind of information goes on the clapboard. We're going to talk about microphones and microphone placement, the type of microphones you may want to use if you're shooting a live video. And then we're going to talk about lighting. Lighting and microphones are very essential. Clapboards aren't as essential. They're more of just a very useful tool. And the larger your production, the more likely you'll want to use a clapboard. But we'll talk about those here. The first one I'll talk about is the clapboard. Here's the clapboard that we used on this project that I am working on here for eLearning Brothers. So let's just go ahead and zoom in. We held this up at the beginning of every single shot, every single take. As soon as I hit the record button on the camera, the very first thing that camera sees, no matter what, is that slate. The very first frame is that slate. And I'll talk about why in a second. Let's go ahead and zoom in and take a look at what's on here. All right, so on this slate, it has roll, scene, take, production, director, camera, frames per second, FPS, the date, int, ext, day, night, sync, and MOS. So let's go ahead and talk about what each one of these are and why we use a slate. So a slate, the reason you have it be the very first thing is so that when you have all of your clips in the media bin, and you're seeing their little thumbnails, the thumbnail has the slate on it. So you know, hey, I know that for scene 2B2, take 1 was a better take than take 2 or 3, or 3 was the best, or even if you're of the belief that the very last take that you shot is always going to be the best, a slate is good because it helps you know where those takes are, helps you shuffle through, and saves you time. It can also give you useful information if you're shooting in other ways. So a roll is a roll used to be like a roll of film. A lot of cameras now, because we shoot digitally, are going to be shooting on SD cards. So if you have 2 or 3 SD cards that you're going to be using, you'll label them 1, 2, and 3, or A, B, and C, or however you want to label them. And roll is where the roll here is where you're going to put which SD card that was. So this was SD card 1, roll 1. Scene, this was scene 2 in the film, in the video that we shot, scene 2. So we had all organized into separate scenes. This was scene 2. Shot B, meaning that if you broke down that whole scene and shot it into each camera shot, this was shot B. And the 2 means this was the second iteration of B. So we had 2B, and it just wasn't working, or we wanted to try it in a different style, a different way, so we've added the 2 after the B. Most of our slates for this film just say 2B or 3A or 3C. There's not a second number, but in this particular one, we had a second iteration of that same shot, so we put a 2. And then this was take 1. If you go and do the shot, hi, I would like to tell you about this video, and you don't think you did very good, so you have to do it again. The only thing you change on the slate is the take, unless you're going to a different part in your script. Then you'll change these ones. And then, of course, if you switch SD cards, you want to change roll. These other ones are kind of for more practical purposes or more technical purposes as we get into the making of the film. So this is the production. We Are eLearning Brothers is the working title of this production. We Are eLearning Brothers. Obviously that wouldn't fit, so we shortened it to ELB. This is director, and I put my own name, Andrew. Sometimes you'll put a big, long, fancy name. In bigger productions, they'll even have like a sticker, a big, long sticker that you just stick in all of these places. And that way you don't have to worry about them getting erased with the dry erase marker like this was. Camera. I've seen this one filled out in a lot of different ways. One is you can put the type of camera, which is what I did. The BMPCC stands for Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera. Other people would list the director of photography in the camera. Some people would list the name of the photographer, the camera worker that was doing that work. So you could go to them and say, do you remember if you have this, or what you did this, or why did you do this, or what mistakes did you made, or I really like the way this was worked. Let's hire that cameraman again and look it up on the slate of who that was. Something like that. I always just put the name of my camera there. This one right here, cam number 1. If you have more than one camera on a shoot. You don't generally have to put the type of camera here, because if you have more than one camera, hopefully you're using the same type of camera for both of them. But you number your cameras. Camera 1, camera 2, camera A, camera B, things like that. Frames per second. This is super important. If you have one camera that's shooting at 23.9 frames per second and another one that's shooting at 24, you're going to get different visuals on your timeline. If you have one that's shooting at 30 and one's that's shooting at 24, it's going to be different. So making sure that your frames per second are the same and having that on the slate is very useful. The date, and then all of these are just circleable options, but they're just two options, 1 and 2, 1 and 2, 1 and 2. So this is whether it's an interior shot or an exterior shot. This one is whether it's day or night. And this means you're syncing your audio, or this one means that it's no sound. The reason MOS came around is it's mute at sound. That's just how it came around. For some reason they chose to do that. So you kind of circle those and figure out what you want to do. And that's why we have the slate. Mostly when I use a slate, the things that I'm looking for are right here, these two boxes. If you want to know about these colors and shades of gray here, this is for color grading. When we first shot this, it was not color graded. I shot it in a ProRes format. But when I then had to take it into a video editor and color correct it, and if that white didn't come out to be exactly white and the black didn't come out to be black, then I would know something was off. Or if these colors aren't green, yellow, red, and blue, then you know you've got some problems. Another thing that you'll definitely want to do with your slate, another thing that it's called, is a clapboard. The reason is that these open and close and they make a clapping sound. The reason you do that is if you are trying to sync your audio and you're recording with a microphone that's not recording straight into the camera, so you've got your microphone over here and your camera over here and they're not connected, but so you hit record on the camera and then you hit record on the microphone and then you point them both at your person and they read the slate. They say scene 2, boy 2, take 1, and then they go clap. And then when you bring it into Camtasia or your editor, your video editor, you can find that big spike in the audio on either both of them and then line those up, or you can go to the point in your video where your slate clapped, where your slate closed. The moment it closed, then you drag that spike in your audio right up to that moment, and then your audio is now synced with your video. So that's why you use a clapboard. That's why it's called a clapboard. So that helps us segue directly into the next thing, which is audio. If you look at your microphone placement in this picture, can you find the microphone? The answer is no. A lot of the times you don't want your microphone to show. Sometimes you do. You'll see in some documentaries people will have a microphone clipped on to their shirts and it'll be pointing up and you can see that. You can see that she doesn't have a lapel mic showing. She doesn't have a lapel mic not showing either. We didn't use a lapel mic on her in this video. If you do it interior, you'll usually clip it on to the shirt right around here or here and then run that cable down to a wireless antenna, a broadcaster, down on their hip that'll go to a receiver, and that receiver will go into your mixer, your recorder. What we did here was a small boom. We used one of the Zoom H4Ns, and we put it on a boom pole, and then we actually wired that H4N straight from the microphone down the boom pole and then into the camera, so we didn't have to worry about syncing. There were a few shots that we shot where we had the microphone separate from the camera so that we did sync them, but most of the time I don't like to sync. It adds a little bit of an extra step, so if I can avoid it, I do when it comes to syncing. But that microphone is just out of frame up above her head. It's up here. And a few times we had to do new takes because while she was moving, the microphone would dip down. Taylor, our boom operator, is holding that boom pole, and it's pretty heavy. It gets pretty heavy, and every once in a while it'll dip down in front of her, and you have to take it again. Depending on your shot, you may want that microphone to be above, you may want that microphone to be below or off to the side, as long as it's pointing at their face and you get a good sound. Taylor, when he's holding the microphone, and you can see in this picture actually, he's making sure that everything that comes into the microphone sounds good. So you can see here there's let's zoom in a little bit and take a look. So here's our H4N strapped into a boom pole, and it wraps around so that it doesn't bump on the pole and make a loud noise. Comes down the pole and then transfers over to this and into my camera. Then you can also see that he's wearing headphones. That headphone wire is coming down and also into the camera. So he is hearing exactly what the microphone is sounding like. So he knows if it was too quiet. He knows if he can hear someone rustling in a different area, opening a candy wrapper, or talking too loud. He can hear that from this microphone because he is monitoring it live as it's happening. And so that's how we were able to get quality sound. You can see that he's holding it up, and that pole is pretty long. So the further out you go, the heavier it is. And so microphone placement is important. The next thing we want to talk about is lighting. Lighting is looking pretty good here. It's not exactly even. On this side, looks like she's not quite twice as bright as this side. But I mean, this side is obviously dimmer. That's a technique in 3-point lighting. It helps her look more interesting, not as flat. So we have a light here on her face, and we also have a light here, but this light is further away. If we go back to this picture, you can kind of see that. This is a 360 picture. So this light is fairly close to her, and this one is jammed way back in the corner, and it's not as bright right on her. If we go to this picture, it shows you the exact lighting of this frame because she walked. So she walks from here, and you can see that this lighting is pretty heavy on her right side and not on her left. That's because we are in this position. She's standing right here. This light is shining on her face, and this one is gently bleeding onto her. So it's not as great as it is here, but it is still interesting. It's a little heavy on the one side. By the time she gets in here, again, back to this lighting diagram, this one is closer, so it's a little brighter, and this one's further away, and it's a little more gentle. And so it gives her a nice wrap around on her face. 3-point lighting is extremely important. You want to have a bright light, or your key light, on one side. You want to have a not quite as bright light on the other side, so it creates some three-dimensionalism with the brightness and non-brightness. And then you want a third light that's either going to light up your backdrop so that they stick out from that backdrop, or it's going to shine on them and make a little hair light that lights up the back of their hair and gives them kind of an edge glow around the edge of their head. That's 3-point lighting. So here, I did 1 and 2, and then this third one is kind of bleeding onto this back wall, the way it's designed. You can see that back wall isn't beautifully lit, but it is lit pretty well. And so that's how I did the lighting. If you have any questions about these, please let me know. I'd be happy to go into it further. Again, with e-learning, you do want to have quality videos, quality live action videos. You want these to be entertaining, and you want them to be educational. You don't want people to be distracted by poor video quality. So these are some great tips to help you become a better live action video maker. Thanks.